Daddy eats lots. Daddy eats lots. Daddy eats lots. Munch, munch, munch.
Hello and welcome to Daddy Eats Last, where we discuss the challenges of being a man in modern society and whatever the hell that even means. I'm Kane, and joining me today, as usual, to chat man stuff are Ryan and Maddie. Firstly, gents, how was the weekend?
Great, mate. We had the indoor cricket Burnlow, we call it. So it's our equivalent of the Brownlow. We had that here in Melbourne on Saturday, and then followed it up with a poker night, and won one of the poker games. So came out with a few dollars ahead. So a good weekend.
Bit of man time.
Yes, bit of man time. Actually, we were debating. There was obviously the AFL finals were on. The guys who were single were like, yep, we'll do the Saturday final and we'll do the Friday poker. And the fellas who weren't single were, boys, we only have a leave pass for one. We're coming to the poker Burnlow. We'll watch the footy at home.
Too funny. Matthew, what about your good self?
Yeah, we had a nice weekend up here. Nice family weekend. So we had a twilight run we all went to last night. So a few of us did a 10K walk and some of us did a 10K run, but then finished with some fireworks at 7. So I've never done one of them before, so it was really good. So Kim and the girls sort of did the walk, and I did the run, and then it was just a great night all around.
7 p.m. fireworks. Could you even see them? Would it still have been light, wouldn't it?
No, it gets dark a lot earlier than you guys down south here. So we're getting dark about 5:30, 5:45.
Hence the daylight savings doesn't change for you guys.
No, we don't have that, which is a bit of a sore point for me. But apparently up here they don't really care about it too much.
Well, before I tell you about my weekend, Ron, we had a question from one of our listeners with regards to the journaling that you mentioned last week, and they actually asked about whether TK could or does she read your journal? Is she allowed to?
Good question. She certainly could. Does she? Not that I'm aware of. Although, usually like if I'm journaling about business challenges or some other stuff, she's probably aware of it anyway because we're talking about it. So there's been 1 or 2 times where I've gone, oh yeah, I wrote some stuff about that and sort of gave it to her to read, but I'm not aware of her hunting it down and looking at it, but it sits on the desk in the study. So, I mean, it's not padlocked or anything.
Unlike my sister's diary, which my friend at the time broke into with a paperclip, and now they're married. So it's funny how these things work.
Well done.
Smooth.
Yeah. Well, my weekend, last week, I've been on roadshow for the last 2 weeks talking at a couple of different events throughout Australia. So on the weekend, I said to my better half whether she wanted to escape for the weekend. So she took up that opportunity and left on Saturday morning and has just got back on Sunday evening. So I spent the whole weekend with the little fella, which was good. You have your moments with the little fella where he's at the age now where he wants to do X and he wants to do Y. And if he doesn't get to do those, he'll stamp his feet and throw himself on the ground and yell out occasionally. So that's always fun and games. So my weekend was spent basically dealing with little tantrums every now and again, but just making sure he got through without any sort of issue. But that does lead me on to what I wanted to have a chat about today, which is about traveling and the difference between traveling with and without kids and traveling for work and for pleasure. So now, Matthew, I know you've got 3 and you obviously haven't traveled since the third one has been born. But the first 2, did you get out much and about? I know you do a fair bit of travel with the kids. Yeah. How does that go?
We do a bit of travelling with the kids. Obviously, my parents down in Melbourne, so we try and get down there a couple of times a year. We all jump on the aeroplane down for that. We haven't done a road trip yet, and I don't think we will in the foreseen future. The wife is very adamant not to do one. So apart from those domestic trips, we've done a couple of trips to Europe as well for White Christmases. So we went in 2012, and that was when Mia was 6 months old. So that was quite easy in itself because she was still breastfeeding and she was basically just in the pram for the whole month, either with hypothermia or she was just nice and quiet in the pram. I'm not too sure about that, but so that was quite easy to do. And we did go back in 2016 as well. So Mia was 4.5 and Eloise was 18 months, and that was completely different. So Mia was at the age where she was, she was right into the trip, and the better half in her wisdom before the trip planned a lot of activities for the kids to do on the planes, presents to open just to keep them entertained. A little activity book for Mia when we were going around Europe to see the Eiffel Tower, tick it off, and whatnot like that. And we put some flags on the girls' wall as well, just they sort of understood what countries we'd be going to. But traveling, with kids as opposed to not the kids is so different. And I learned that on the first trip, because having been overseas previously, you're on the plane, just enjoying life. The drinks are free flowing. Movies here, there, and everywhere. And that first trip with the 6-month-old, wow, yeah, I think I had maybe one drink, watched maybe half a movie in the 22 hours of the flying. You're cuddling the baby, making sure she was, not annoying any other passengers, which I know, that happens. But yeah, it was just, it's such an eye opener.
Just on that, do you pick a particular flight time which suits the kids' ages better, or you just pick whatever flight, is the cheapest flight? Is there a rationale between the flight that you choose if you're traveling with kids?
Going down to Melbourne, 100%. We always pick a flight that's sort of, in the middle of the day, never sort of, 8 o'clock in the morning when it's, super peak hour with people, traveling down for work and things like that. We try to avoid those times. And then we also try to avoid, after 5 o'clock when we'd be in the air when they're trying to get to bed, because we've done that before. And, when it's, crazy time, like 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and they're restless and they want food and trying to get to sleep, absolute nightmare. So we've learned from that. So we know the times that work for our kids, and that makes life a little bit easier.
Yeah, 5 o'clock it is the witching hour. Anyone who tells you otherwise if they've got kids is lying. That between 5 o'clock and bedtime is just, I don't know, it's the devil inside. Every single one of them, the devil inside.
Why is that?
It's just the end of the day.
I've got no idea, obviously, but I would have thought that it wouldn't be that bad. I would have thought they'd be
it's the end of the day.
Tuckering in.
Usually they're hungry, so it's getting towards dinner time, and they're kind of hanging out for bed. Most of the time they've been on the go since 7 o'clock or earlier in the day. So it's just been go, go, go. They might have snuck a little bit of a nap in the middle of the day, but I think it's just that cumulative amount of time that they've been up during the day, and they're only little, so they don't really have that sort of inbuilt capacity to just keep on enduring. They hit the wall and they let you know.
Fair enough.
But Ron, you're off overseas on a big jet plane the next couple of weeks, aren't you?
I am. I'm hanging out for it. I'll get on a plane and head to the US of A for about a 3.5-week trip, and a bit of Canada in there as well, and hopefully come back alive. Never been to the US, and people do say that it can be a dangerous place, so we'll find out.
So how different is it to what Matt just described then about flying at a particular time potentially, and also just the different things you'll do on the plane, like being able to actually use the plane trip as some downtime? Because I know when I used to travel for work pre-kids, traveling on the plane was a great time to relax as much as anything else.
Yeah, it's a good question. So I'm going over for a little bit of work, so I get a few extra perks in that as well, which will be nice. So
does that mean the front of the plane?
For the long haul flights, yeah, we'll be at the front of the plane. So I'm actually just thoroughly excited for that. But I guess it's just 100% different to what Matt was saying. Like, I'm sitting there already on the Qantas app going, all right, I'll watch that movie, I'll watch that. That sounds like a good podcast. Like, I'll punch out a little bit of work, because I do find so I do travel a bit outside of this trip, obviously, but a lot of domestic stuff. So do a little bit of work and that. But yeah, I mean, what you were saying there, traveling, I suppose, with our kids, for me, I look at travel as a bit of downtime where plan to rock up the airport a little bit early, enjoy the lounge, knock some work off, get on a flight, and either listen to a podcast, watch a movie, or just enjoy a few glasses of red.
Yeah. Now on that, like, you're obviously going for the first part without TK. It's a work-based thing to begin with. Like, is there any sort of feelings of I'm leaving TK behind, or maybe doesn't that get factored in when you're kind of pre-kids or pre-marriage? I don't know.
It's 6 days, and then she sort of flies over and joins me at the end of the work part, and then we will have the trip. But I did feel pretty bad earlier this year. I went on a month trip over overseas and didn't really think too much of it, and then got back and probably should have thought a bit more on it. But yeah, I mean, without kids, I guess the biggest thing for us is the logistics of, because we both sort of, like, she was in Sydney a couple of weeks ago. We do a fair bit of domestic travel for a bit of work. It's just really logistics of what night are you going to be home for dinner. There's nothing too major, or just, going, okay, yeah, I've had a big month where I've done 3 or 4 trips, and make sure you clear out time and don't go to the football and poker night on one weekend.
Well, here's an interesting one, actually. I was actually asked last week to attend a work conference in November in the US of A, and it's all expenses paid. It's business class flights. They put you up for a week. It's a work conference, so you get a ticket to the conference. You get to do the networking and things like that. And I turned it down on the basis that I didn't think I couldn't get my head around being away from the little fella for a week at a time, and also the pressure that would put on my other half. She'd have to basically do everything 24/7 for him, and it's a real sort of weight when you have a kid for that amount of time, because you only have certain breaks, and maybe in the middle of the day and maybe at the end of the day after they've gone to bed, where you can kind of have a little bit of you time. But when I explained it to the organisation who offered it to me, they on the whole were really good. Got a kid, he's 2.5, can't really come with us. I don't feel right leaving him for that amount of time. And it's probably a $25,000 sort of trip that I've thumbed my nose at for something which, is maybe unusual for some people.
I mean, how did you find, because you was just saying you've done 2 weeks of roadshow, and I know that's just been domestic stuff, but like, how did you find that, obviously with the little fella there and that kind of thing? Because yeah, for me, I look at that and go, great trip, jump on it. But yeah, I mean, you're also, I know that you do basically part-time dad role, as opposed to, full-time. And I do wonder, the other thought that I have is, what about the people that just purely for work, you are getting on a plane, go for a week, otherwise you don't have a job. And they're like, well, if I don't go, my family probably won't eat. So keen on your thoughts on both those.
Yeah, well, definitely. If it's something where you have to travel for work and it's not optional, then yeah, always you have to travel. It's part of your job. Where this is a conference and it's kind of networking and it's flippy, floppy stuff. It's not for a particular client thing. And I have a client meeting coming up this Thursday, and we were meant to be away. And I said, oh, listen, I can't afford to be away for this particular meeting because it's possibly a really big deal for our business. So we chose not to go away for that. So we're really lucky in that we have the ability to choose when and if we travel for things. The flip side of that is with the roadshow, I did silly things. Like I flew back from Perth in an afternoon so I could spend a morning with the little fella before I flew up to Brisbane, instead of going straight from Perth to Brisbane and sort of spending the whole week away. So where I have the opportunity to be home and I have the choice to be home and it's not going to affect something severely, then I'll always choose to be home. If that work conference was rather than being a work conference, if that was to see a client for a week and it was a really big client, then I'd probably do it. So it's just prioritizing where you spend your time, because time's finite. You only have so much time. And I don't think anyone's going to go to their grave and go, I wish I had gone to that work conference when I was, X years and didn't spend a week with my kids. So if you have the choice to prioritize, then I think you should always try to. But at the same time, it probably would have been nice to be away for a week, but I don't really care.
Oh, that's good that you don't care, mate, because a week in your little fella's life is a long time. And I think your situation is sort of unique, how you part-time dad role with your wife as well. So it's not like you can, she's staying at home with the little fella for the whole week, you'd be away. So it doesn't really work for you guys, like you said. So we made the right choice there, I think.
He's at that age where it's a really nice sort of time to be able to spend with them before they, inevitably just probably, I won't say care less about you, but they have things which become more important in their life.
How do you find with, I guess, the evolution of you doing, say, a dad part-time role, and I know how you guys change it a little bit. We moved around a lot when I was a kid, and my old man was in the Air Force, and he would spend bucket loads of time away because he was in the Air Force, but mum was that full-time caregiver role. And I mean, I think you made the right choice, and agree with what Matt said, because a week as a kid, like we noticed that a lot when we were younger. As I got older, I didn't notice it, and there could be times where it was 6 to 9 months sort of stints over in the Middle East and whatnot. But yeah, how do you think that, I guess because it is evolving, that whole dad role that you're sort of doing, that people just don't think that, I suppose?
Yeah, I think it's probably a topic which we'll spend a bit of time on down the track discussing in a lot more detail around dad roles and part-time and full-time and what that means these days. But yeah,
Love it.
the travel's a weird one because there's just so much dead time involved with work travel as well. And I've done a lot of travel for work. And Matt, you've accompanied me on a couple of trips across to India. People think when you travel for work is such an awesome perk. Traveling for work sucks.
I haven't done much travel for work, Kane, except for that trip I did with you to India. And that same year as well, I did a bit of other work for where we both used to work at, just traveling around to different sites and doing some asset registering. So that was quite an experience. But you do a lot of when we were flying. I noticed you were pumping out the emails up in the air. I was sitting back on the JD watching movies, and you're just punching at the emails. So you do some work in the air, mate.
Well, for me, back then it was catching up on a lot of emails. But I also remember, Matthew, a flight when we were flying back from India to Singapore, and I think there was a kid either side of us or between us, and I vividly remember you rolling your eyes at me when this little kid on a midnight flight was like parking up, and now you're that guy.
I am that guy. I've come full circle.
I've always said that because traveling a bit, and I'm always like, no. My mum actually said that. I got shirty once when I was a teenager, and she goes, one day that'll be you. And I've always gone, yep, just remember, because it will not be a fun position to be in. But you're absolutely right, Kane, with like traveling for work is one day to turn a so-called 8-hour workday into a 14, 15-hour workday very quick. And I've done it a number of times where you go up in Sydney back in a day and you're there for 8 hours of work plus all the dead time, plus you do because you're going for work. So you're at the airport at 5 and you're like, well, I got nothing better to do before my flight, so I'll knock off some emails and stuff. You don't get back till 10:30, you're absolutely wrecked, and you're expected to be back in the office at 8:30 the next day. So I'll echo that it's not nearly as glamorous as everyone thinks it is.
We used to get a per diem when we traveled when I was at a bigger accounting firm, and we used to try to save it as best we can. So we'd actually, because we were kind of still fairly young when we were doing these sort of things, so we'd actually get a pizza the night before and then have the cold pizza for breakfast in the morning. So our $89 per diem would end up with a $75 profit straight in our pocket. So yeah, but the work travel thing's an absolute bust because that, like you said, they're a 14-hour day, and you're only at best probably going to get paid for 8, and they'll throw you a bone so you can, maybe get a bite to eat. But people think when you travel for work, it's really glamorous, and you travel for work, you're so lucky, but it's just not right at all. It's
smart what you're saying, Matt, because I have been one of those people on that 8 a.m. Sydney flight, and that is like you might as well be catching a packed tram or train. I think actually Sydney to Melbourne is in the top 10 most common routes in the world, but it is literally like just catching a train in the air, and everybody is just grumpy as shit.
Yeah, I did one of them on Friday on the way home, and it's the first flight I've ever got which had Wi-Fi on it.
I hate that.
Yeah, which is a curse. I thought, I'll just come on the plane here and I'll just watch some mindless TV. And then I've gone, okay, we've got Wi-Fi now. I sent a couple of emails, and then because I was trying to work out whether to get home in time for bed on Friday night, I was texting the missus and just going, okay, we're running 15 minutes behind. It'd be touch and go whether I make it home, if the Uber runs on time, what Uber trip should I go? So Wi-Fi was good in that I could communicate about when I might be getting home, but at the same time, it would have been nice to have the Wi-Fi switched off and just watch something on the in-flight entertainment system without having to worry about anything.
Yeah, you've lost your downtime with that now. You just can't escape the
How do you guys find? I mean, we've spoken a lot about travel with planes, which is a big way that I travel, but with kids and that, I remember like when we were kids, we would. It wasn't really economical for us to fly a lot when we were living in Sydney, and we had dad's family in Adelaide and mum's in Perth. So we would actually drive a lot. Do you guys find that you do much, or that do you just think of travel differently having kids, where you go, well, maybe we'll do a road trip, or maybe instead of a holiday and getting on a plane and going to Bali or New Zealand or whatever it is, we'll go 2 hours out and we'll spend time in some space and some camping or something like that. Does it change your way of thinking about travel with kids?
It does for us, because of the ages the kids are at now. I've spoken to the missus quite a bit about in the future going and doing these camping trips. Our neighbours do a lot of them, and the pictures we see on social media of that is just, they look like they're having so much fun. So I'm looking forward to hopefully that eventuating. But at the moment, we sort of don't go any further than maybe an hour up from Brisbane or an hour down from Brisbane, just because of the car travel, and the little fella screams his head off in the car, and the girls, unless they've got a device in front of them, are sort of just, kicking the back seat or whatnot. But funny, earlier this year, I drove down to Melbourne after Christmas with mum and dad and my eldest Mia, and we stopped at all the sites like Byron Bay, the Big Banana, all those kind of things, Sydney Opera House. And it was funny because Mia would have the iPad in front of her, and every time we pull out of a town, she's like, "Dad, it's not working. What's going on here?" And I'm trying to explain to her, the internet's not great when you're sort of out, in remote areas, sort of thing. And even when you drive past a monument or a landmark or something, you'd say, "Oh, Mia, look at that. That's the giant prawn or something." She wouldn't even look up from the iPad. She'd just go, "Oh yeah, that's great," and just keep watching it. And I just thought back to when we were kids, doing these. We did a lot of road trips when we were kids, like across to Perth and up to Queensland and things like that. And without those devices, it's just a book, or you'd just be looking out the window. And yeah, the kids these days, they've got it really good. I think when it comes to travel, they've got every little accessory they need to keep them going.
Yeah, and I'm sure you weren't in the back just going, "Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet?"
Guilty.
With regards to us with travel, now we actually haven't left the States since our little fellow was born in January 2016. So we've been entirely inside Victoria, and we time when we travel around his sleep time, so we can, he can sleep in a traditional sort of manner. And we found that really good, because I do think that sort of terrible twos, horrible threes, and I think someone called it the F and fours the other day. A lot of that is around that particular level of tiredness. So when kids get really tired, they get super grumpy. There's no filter and there's no "I need to sleep." They just get really grumpy. So we do our best to time, even travel to family around sleep times. And that often means that we have to leave, 30 minutes, an hour before something finishes. But sometimes this is a compromise we have to do just to make sure the little fella has a sleep and, he has a good day.
So much to look forward to with the. I've never heard the F and fours. That's
Yeah,
a new one.
someone coined it the other day. I've gone, okay. You're living it, mate. You can coin it as whatever you want. You can tell the days where the kid undersleeps over the night or doesn't get quite enough of a nap, and we're lucky that he naps during the day still. He doesn't get enough nap during the day. That afternoon is going to just be, okay, what do you do to get through? And before we had him, we traveled to Europe a couple of times. We did X, we did Y. We'd pack up and go away for a weekend, but it changes a lot. It's a good change, but it's a compromise to what you're used to have been doing travel-wise.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask, if you travelled a lot before, because yeah, I mean, we did a fair bit of road tripping that when I was younger, but I was of the time when Game Boys and Pokemon were big, so I kind of got whacked with that and sit in the back and play with it. But it's interesting because TK and I do travel quite a bit. Sort of every second year and it's not even we haven't actually consciously worked it out, except for until this year. But we sort of have fallen into a pattern where every second year we're getting overseas, and then we sort of have 1 year where we work really hard and then sort of do a bit more travel in that. But we'll go away to 2 hours out of Victoria for a weekend away, or we've got interstate family, so we're always on a plane domestically. And we're off to a number of weddings next year, one up in Palm something up in Brisbane or near Port Douglas. But we're off to Germany for a German wedding as well, and all this. And we were over at our friend's place, and they're expecting, and we're all kind of that age where everybody's having weddings, and everybody's having weddings that you need to travel to, and they've got to go to Bali for a wedding for a week, and for a weekend, and then the following weekend they're in Port Douglas for another one, and they're based here in Melbourne, and they will have a 7-month-old and their first kid. And they have actually had to coordinate it because they're off to Bali and then they got to go to Queensland, and they're like, it wasn't worth coming back to Melbourne. They've actually had to go, we're paying for one of the mother-in-laws to come on the trip with them
Yep.
to try and accommodate this. And we were chatting with them, and it's just like, yep, it's going to be a whole new ball game for them. So it'll be interesting to see how they go.
That is money well spent, that.
But
I'll let them know.
we have the perfect example here, Matt, where one of our really good friends, like one of our best mates, had a wedding in Bali, and I could go because at that time I didn't have a kid, and you couldn't go because you had at least one or two kids.
Yeah, spot on. Yeah. It was just really bad timing. And I think it was Mia we had it at the time, but it's just, yeah, we just couldn't fly with her. And I think Kim might have been pregnant as well, so which is unfortunate.
Yeah, it changes everything. Like if this work trip for me had have come up and it's no expensive paid trip to the US and we didn't have a kid, I'd already be over there. And my missus might come. She works in the same industry as me. We run the same business, so she would conceivably come. The roadshow last week and the week before that, which was based around software in our industry, she would have conceivably come along because the hotel room was being subsidized anyway. But with a kid, it's impossible. So everything kind of changes a bit once you have that kid, be it weddings, be it work travel. Unless it's absolutely essential work travel, that mindset just needs to change a little bit in that what's okay to do sometimes, but also what you really need to do, just prioritizing things.
Plenty to look forward to.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a good point that you made there. Like we've even, like I do a fair bit more travel than TK, but even when she does, it's kind of like we look at what we've got. I'll turn around and go, okay, well, so you're up in Sydney then. I'm going to be there the week before. So actually, well, can that move to then? And because exactly that, like the hotel's already looked after, and if you're going there, you might as well jump on it. But yeah, I suppose when you have a kid, to think of, I mean, I know that we never really did it. Like I'm one of three, and when Dad would have a trip or he'd go somewhere for a week or whatever, I don't think Mum would have liked the idea to then follow 2 days later with 3 kids under 10 on a plane.
Yeah, I saw a lady doing that a couple of weeks ago on one of my flights, and kudos to her because she managed that really well. So if you're out there, you did a very good job. That about wraps it up for this week. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back next week for another episode, or should I say serving, of Daddy Eats Last. How's that one for a dad joke? Catch you all next week.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.